Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. My name is Hannah, and on my channel I do anti-MLM content. I also have a clothing reselling business on the Poshmark app, so there's a lot of reselling tips and tricks videos on my channel as well. For today's video, I have another MLM horror stories for you. These are the stories that you have taken the time to type out and email to me and have given me permission to react to for a video. The purpose of these videos is to give you a platform to be able to share your story, to share your experiences, let you know that you're not alone, and to also shed light on the insane things that go on in multi-level marketing companies. I am always looking for new horror stories, so if you have your own experience in a multi-level marketing company, feel free to send it to me. The instructions for how to do that are in the description box of all of my videos. It's very easy. You just send me an email. So with that, let's get into the stories. As always, I have not pre-read any of these. I have them all in a folder in my email. I'm gonna pick out a few at random and we'll react to them together. All right, this story says, "Hey Hannah, I recently found your channel and I've been binging your videos like crazy. Thank you for doing that. I love that. Number one, you are beautiful. And number two, I love how kind and well-spoken you are. I always get a little chuckle from your commentary too. I have been anti-MLM for many moons, and at this point, I am so glad there are so many people waking up and seeing the deception around these shady excuses for businesses." Yes, shady excuses for businesses. I love it. This might be a little long, and it isn't exactly a typical horror story, more of just my interesting observations and interactions throughout the years. Like so many others, I have been around them most of my life. Avon, Mary Kay, Pampered Chef, haven't we all? And I narrowly avoided being recruited by Cutco when I was 17. I even accidentally signed up for Legal Shield services when I was going through a hard time, and I thought I would have to go to court. It took my mom completely canceling her card to get them to stop taking money from her, by the way. Wow. But MLMs as we know them today didn't really start blowing up in my area until I was in my 20s. We have it all out here. Herbalife, Rodan & Fields, Beachbody, Zaya, Arbonne, Nu Skin, you name it. I've worked as an exterminator for my family business for many years now. It's hard to be a young woman in this industry, but I love it. I am in and out of people's homes every single day. I have to always be observant of my surroundings when I'm on the job, because not only am I looking for pests, but I'm watching my back and keeping my ears open, because when I'm in someone's home alone, I am vulnerable. You know what? I've never thought about that way. Yeah, we have a pest control service that comes every 2 months and like treats our house and stuff, but I never even considered that those people would feel uncomfortable. And it makes perfect sense, right? You are walking into the homes of strangers and you have no idea what that interaction is going to entail, especially as a young woman. Absolutely. Part of my job is to go into every room of the home I'm in and treat it, and to also look in a lot of the cabinets and cupboards depending on what I'm treating for. Needless to say, I've seen a lot of weird, and I can 1000% validate so many of the things anti-MLMers say on their channels because I get to see it behind the scenes. Lucky you. The Huns forget they can't hide their dirty laundry when someone is literally in their home. I have seen those giant garages of PV for Rodan & Fields or Herbalife overrun with mice or roaches or both. Ugh, oh my god, ew. No, like you mean like people have inventory in their garages and it's like infested? I can't. I have seen giant custom jewelry holder walls for paparazzi PV in a home infested with bed bugs, and yes, in the rooms with bed bugs. Ew. I have seen the oily moms who oil up to their hoo-has and had to break it to them that no matter what their upline told them, some peppermint oil in the window wouldn't keep the brown recluses out. I have seen Monat sellers have 0 Monat products in their shower and use Pantene. No way. That is juicy. I am here for that narrative of Monat Huns talking about how great their hair is and they use Pantene. I use Pantene. I have seen the boss babes that promote being debt-free and having all this extra cash, literally not paying me for months. I've heard the nasty calls / Zooms with fellow uplines and downlines as they happen. And on the other hand, I have seen the overweight girl who just wants to get healthy get tricked by a Beachbody coach and have her kitchen overloaded with Shakeology the next time I come to treat. I have seen the older woman who struggles with health get sucked into buying Arbonne because of all the ridiculous claims. I have seen the moms so proud of their daughter's new job at the Herbalife Shake Shack up the road. I have seen it all. The Huns don't usually try to recruit me. Sometimes they'll work their way into it, but I can smell it coming from a mile away. They'll start with, "How do you like your job? You can't like being around bugs all day. How much do you make?" It's none of your business, okay? And the only reason they're asking and the only reason they care is that they're trying to make money off of you. And I'll just play it all up. I'll tell them how great it is and how busy I am all the time, even if it's a slow season. Most of them drop it at this point. I've had a few give me samples or jewelry, but that's about it. I think my natural RBF helps me in that aspect. I have it too, okay? Just like the resting, angry face is my specialty. At the end of the day, I think a lot of these people are good people that get sucked into bad behavior. In MLMs that deal with makeup and healthcare especially, proper storage of that many products is so crucial because you can really damage someone's health. These women's houses are not warehouses with the right conditions or monitoring 90% of the time. They might be one moldy mascara away from a disaster. What a beautifully written email. Thank you so much for sending that. I loved this story. I'm so entertained by that. And that's insane that you have like witnessed all of those things kind of behind the scenes and seeing how people store these products in their home, especially for like the inventory-based MLMs. Like you said, that's unacceptable to be storing things in that kind of condition in like a bug-infested garage. Could you imagine selling a product to a customer like that? That's crazy. But the Monet Hun using Pantene takes the cake for me. All right, the next one says, "Hi Hannah, I'm a longtime watcher and I saw your most recent MLM horror story video, and what you said about all of us having experienced horror stories with MLMs really struck me. For the longest time, I was dismissive of my experience with MLMs, but I think it's worth sharing. I agree. Even if you have tiny little experiences throughout your life, they're still experiences. They're still worth sharing. There's still something to be learned from them. So even if that is your story, I would love for you to send it in. I have 2 experiences with MLMs that stand out in particular that I thought to share. Sorry if these are too long. I also sent your Arbonne deep dive video to a nurse colleague of mine who had fallen into this, and while she was very resistant at first, she told me that she finally quit Arbonne and realized the only reason she joined was the trauma of the pandemic and wanting to have something that was simpler to do but still paid her bills. Are you telling me that I played some kind of role in getting somebody out of Arbonne? Because if you are, my day has been made. This is completely sidetracking us, but I've actually started a spreadsheet because every so often I'll get a DM, I'll get some kind of comment, or I'll get, some kind of communication of somebody saying, your video is what got me out of my MLM, or I sent this to so-and-so and they got out of their MLM, or your video prevented me from joining an MLM. And it's important to me to keep track of those things. I've just recently started doing this so that I can have a record of it and I can see the work that I'm doing is paying off. That's very rewarding for me. And so if I have done that for you in any kind of capacity, I would love to know about it. It makes my entire day. I'm not kidding. Please do keep me anonymous, of course, always. My parents were immigrants from Korea and my mother is not very fluent in English, but she can manage. A few years ago, we found out that she had a brain tumor, which thankfully was operable. Thank goodness. I'm happy to hear that. My husband and I are both neurosurgeons. Get it! But it's not so ethical to operate on a family member, so we convinced my mom to at least stay with us while she was treated and in recovery. Of course, it took several months for her to fully recover, but once she was brought home, my mom was the kind of person who liked to socialize and do things around the house. She always scolded me for not knowing our neighbors in our condo building well enough, so she took it upon herself to go make friends for me and my husband. We have a lot of young families as neighbors, and who would be rude to a sweet Korean lady? It was nice for my mom to get a chance to mingle, but it turns out one of our neighbors was a young living representative. She was nice to my mom and even invited my husband and me to dinner, which we don't go to eventually. But slowly my mom seemed to be uncomfortable with this neighbor of ours, and I had to really coax my mom to tell me what was wrong. My mom had apparently told our neighbors about her tumor, and the young living rep had launched into a whole rant about how essential oils could help my mother regain her strength and prevent more tumors. That's terrible, okay? I hate that. All false medical claims. My mom is not a native English speaker, so saying no to such a forceful sales pitch was tougher, and she was feeling really bad about it. This neighbor was being very pushy too, trying to invite herself to our house and convince my mom to buy essential oils. Finally, my mom told this woman to talk to me, since I usually bought whatever my mom needed. So this young living rep showed up to give me the sales pitch, but I told her essential oils cannot cure cancer or prevent tumors in any way. And I did not appreciate her manipulating my mother, who was in a vulnerable position. Yes, good for you. She tried to argue about this with me a lot, about how essential oils could help, and then said it's about changing your mindset with essential oils, which removes all the ailments you face. Come on, okay? What, essential oils are the miracle drug of the world that can cure cancer, but all you have to do is shift your mindset to believe that they will cure cancer in order for it to work? Do they hear what they are saying? Do they understand that what is coming out of their mouth is completely absurd? I don't know why she thought it was a good idea to argue with me on this when I quite literally remove brain tumors for a living. Good freaking point? In the end, I threatened to report her to her company and to the FTC, and she left my mom alone finally. Wow. Who does a Young Living rep think she is to argue with a literal neurosurgeon on the effectiveness of essential oils on brain tumors? Beyond me. The second experience was with a friend of mine who I had gone to school with. She was in Mon 8 and I hadn't talked to her in a while, but she reached out because both of our daughters were in the same school and she wanted to meet and catch up. So we decided to meet up with our kids who were friends anyway. She didn't really talk much about Mon 8 in the beginning, only talked about how she was partnering with a company to market their products, which is fine, but things went to hell when I ended up getting a call from my workplace asking if I could come in for an emergency. My friend, let's call her Brittany, was a bit shocked at how I could just cut our meetup short and had to leave. A few days later, Brittany called me again, and I guess my emergency had disrupted her plan to talk about Mon 8 because that's what she wanted to discuss this time. She started saying how concerned she was that I had to run around along like that for my work, and I didn't even have the freedom to hang out with a friend. Then she went on about how my daughter had to be in daycare while I worked, and that I couldn't be there for her, which is frankly weird because my hospital has a daycare for kids of medical staff. My daughter loves being there, and my husband and I can go check on her during our breaks. Once her mommy shaming was over, I told her that I had no complaints about my work situation, and at least when I was home, my daughter had my full attention. Slow claps for that, okay? Slow claps. I say this all the time, but MLM reps, they're tied to their phones constantly. They are constantly working 24/7, no breaks, no vacations. And if that works for you and your family, fine, but it doesn't work for all families, and a lot of mothers and a lot of fathers appreciate being able to go to work, do the work, get paid for it, and then come home and be with their kids and be a present parent. And I hate that that is shamed, okay? It should not be. Both ways are appropriate, both ways can work, but you should not be shaming each other for deciding what's best for you and your family and your kids. I think I offended her pretty bad because she stopped talking or trying to catch up with me and even told her daughter to stop being friends with my kid, which is kind of mean-spirited. That is mean-spirited, okay? Somebody who has worked in schools sees the different kinds of nasty cliques that goes on between children, and when those cliques are perpetuated by their parents, and their parents telling your child, you can't be friends with her, then that child goes to school and says, I'm not allowed to be friends with her, and you can't either. I don't know how old your children are, but if it's a young child, they may not even know why mom is telling them you can't be friends with so-and-so. And all it does is start up like unnecessary drama at school between the kids. Certain kids get singled out. It's horrible. It's horrible to watch, especially when the parents are the ones perpetuating that dynamic. But the worst thing was when the pandemic started. Both my husband and I had no option but to have our daughter live with relatives since we couldn't expose her in any way. That's such a hard decision to make. This Brittany chick had the audacity to taunt me about my childcare situation and asked if my daughter was taken care of since I wasn't home to be a parent, which is honestly so disgusting considering how many of us doctors, nurses, medical staff were struggling taking care of our families, ourselves, and taking care of COVID patients. I'm not saying the healthcare system in our country is perfect, but the pandemic is the one time you'd expect people to realize just how tough this is and to not be absolute about things like this. I don't regret being a doctor or that I had to stay away from my daughter for such a long time because I know that she will understand that I was trying to help people instead of staying home and trying to scam people into pyramid schemes. Why am I getting emotional right now? That's my experiences. I don't know if these are super relevant or even worth your time, but I've seen so many nurses fall into these MLM traps that it makes me really mad, and these companies are preying on people who are victims of a broken healthcare system. Keep doing what you're doing, Hannah. Your videos are so important. I'm cheering for you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing, okay? Healthcare professionals truly feel like the backbone of our society. The past couple of years, we could not be doing it without you. And I'm beyond heartbroken for you that somebody tried to make you feel bad about that. As if being a Mon 8 hun is more important than being on the front lines of a global pandemic. Get over yourself with that. Not you, of course. We're talking about fake name Brittany here, okay? That enrages me, and I'm just beyond sorry that that even happened to you. I'm beyond sorry that she even treated it like that. Please know that they're trained to treat it like that, and my only hope for her is that one day she can remove herself from Mon 8, look back on it, and recognize how messed up that was. And good for you for not letting a Mon 8 rep mom shame you, and for sticking to your guns, and for knowing what's best for your family. Okay, the next story says, hey Hannah, not really a horror horror story, but definitely a convincing one. I'm a Poshmark seller and I also do social media on the side. If you were to find me on LinkedIn or even on my personal page, one could connect the dots that I do Poshmark and social media. I also go to school for marketing, which is also public knowledge to those who seek it. I get a DM from a guy who goes to my school. He tells me he has a business and would love to talk to another student who owns a business as well. We talk back and forth, and the whole time I'm under the impression that he wants me to have some sort of partnership. He's a graphic designer and goes to school for it, and I'm a marketing major, so he made it sound like he wanted to do an exchange of skills to help each other grow. I asked him what his business was, and he said it was a personalized personal care business where he sells soaps, shampoos, supplements. He said a Walgreens, but customizable. That's new. That's a new one for me. And ships right to you. I thought that was very advanced for a business idea, especially for someone who is in the graphic design field, but I went with it. We set up a time to meet, thinking we would talk about social media strategy or how we can help each other out. I get to this meeting and he says, "I'm glad you're here. I've been practicing my pitch and I want to test write it out with you." That should have been a red flag. I thought it was just something he wanted to run past me. Turns out it was Amway. I sat through an hour of one-on-one with this guy for Amway products, and at the end of it, he said, "So how do you want to pay today?" And the total was like $343. Wow, bold of him. How do you want to pay? Did I say I was interested? I politely declined and said I don't have that kind of money. Then he mustered up the courage to ask why I was even here if I wasn't going to help him out. Rude. He was the one that needed to practice a pitch. You were just like doing him a favor and sitting in on it. I asked if he had social media for his business to try and save this atrocity, and then he said, "We try not to have social media for these products." I don't remember what he fully said, but he said he has to take down or flag people's reviews of product on social media, good or bad. Like he can't have any social media for this business. During this time, he also set me up as a seller, which I didn't ask for. I was under the impression it was some sort of admin thing he wanted me to do for his business, but it was a seller profile. After the meeting ended, I went home and I Googled Amway. I had never heard of it, and it turns out it is an MLM. A few days later, he asked if I had tried any of the samples he gave me, and I said no. He got a bit upset, and then I sent him a paragraph along the lines of, "I respect the hustle, get your money, but I don't appreciate how I was deceived." And then he said that Poshmark and Amway are basically the same, and I just blocked him. He 100% knew what he was doing. He deceived me, and I didn't even see his defense to my DM. Let me know if you want or need any more details. I love this story. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I'm also a Poshmark seller. I purchase clothing and I resell it on Poshmark for a profit. And I have an entire video on my channel about comparing reselling to being in an MLM, and they are very much not the same thing. There's a couple minute details that may or may not be able to be compared on some level, but in the grand scheme of it, totally not the same thing. And so I very, very much dislike when people in MLMs are like, "Well, you're just basically doing this already by being on Poshmark." Like, you clearly do not understand what you are involved in versus what I am involved in. And isn't that such a red flag that he doesn't want any social media around this business or the products? I guess in general, like Amway sellers don't want it on social media. I mean, yikes. That's not a good sign. With the way that the world is going and with the advancement in social media, technology, all that jazz, it kind of is the way of the future to be marketing on social media, and MLMs typically rely heavily on that narrative that this is the way of the future. This is how everything is going to be sold one day. You need to get in on the opportunity now. But the fact that like Amway is like, "No, we don't want to be on social media," I feel like that's because it opens them up to a lot of critique, and it might be a lot harder to rope people into it. And they rely on these one-on-one meetings where they get you in a room together and they kind of corner you, for lack of a better term. I would imagine that's a very big tactic for this MLM, is to focus more on like the in-person communications versus the social media side. But thank you for sending in your story and good luck with your Poshmark business. That's awesome. Okay, this next story says, "Hi Hannah, first off, love your content. Sincerely, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your support. I'm writing to you partly to get this story off my chest. I'm 20 and a law student from Montreal, Canada. Monate is rampant here, but sadly the anti-MLM movement's warnings are less well known. Back before I knew what MLMs were, I lost my 2 jobs after my workplaces shut down at the start of the pandemic. Law school isn't cheap. Around the same time, a girl, we will call her Emma, added me on Instagram. I don't usually accept follow requests from strangers, but she was following several of my friends and lived nearby. I followed her back. Almost immediately, I was struck with the difference between her Instagram and other Instagrams like mine. It was so curated, impersonal, while also oversharing. It confused me. What a great point. You can absolutely tell, at least I feel like I can tell these days because I look at so many profiles. You can tell if they're in an MLM in this day and age, okay? All of the profiles look the same. Like you said, curated, cookie cutter, but also weirdly like almost too personal. It's very strange. It's like impersonal, but also too personal at the same time. Like they share way too much information about their lives, but at the same time, you can tell that they're in an MLM, and you can almost tell which MLM they're in just by looking at like the overall aesthetic of their Instagram page. You can tell who's in Monat. You can tell who's in Plexus. You can tell who's in Beachbody. They all structure their Instagrams the same. All while simultaneously, like in the captions of those posts, hi Cooper, they're sharing a ton of information about their personal life to become more relatable. Are you gonna snuggle me while we do this story? Oh, I feel like their winter coats are coming in, you know what I mean? Like in the summer, they're not quite as soft as they are in the winter. It's the best. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw some of her stories, mostly sharing her business opportunity. I was curious about it considering I had lost both of my jobs, so I started watching them more avidly. At some point, she put up a very vulnerable story about being in an abusive relationship with an older man. This really played on my heartstrings since a similar experience happened to me. I messaged her trying to dissuade her from the rhetoric she was displaying, which was strongly self-deprecating. Little did I know it would become a trap. She tied in Monat so quickly it made my head spin. She told me that it was because of Monat that she felt empowered enough to be free of that trauma. Not knowing I struggled with a similar experience, she told me she wanted to give me the same opportunity. We organized a FaceTime call to discuss it. During the FaceTime call, alarm bells started going off in my brain as she explained to me that I would make pennies to her dollars as a lawyer. She even told me I should consider dropping out. Despite me basically only meeting her for the first time, and despite me telling her being a lawyer had been my dream since I was 12, I hung up the call an hour later feeling terribly uncomfortable. After finding the anti-MLM community on YouTube weeks later, her behavior finally made sense. I was disgusted she would weaponize trauma relatability to try to recruit me. I have a new dream now, finding a legal method to ban MLMs in Canada when I'm an attorney one day. Thank you ahead of time if you choose to share this in a video, and thank you for all you do. How incredible would that be if you took a path in law specifically tailored towards MLM companies? I love that path for you. I think that's a wonderful goal. And it's interesting that she roped you into a FaceTime call because they are being trained to do that now, especially in Monat. I think it's MLM Top Fails 25 on my channel where we watch a Monat training where they're talking about how to do this. Don't just get in their DMs, okay? Get them on a phone call, get them on a FaceTime, invite them to a Zoom call. That is the new tactic these days to really kind of corner you in the online space, so beware of that. And I love this phrase, weaponize trauma relatability. That's a very powerful phrase, and it explains so beautifully what people in MLMs do as it relates to oversharing, right? The curation is all the same, but every person has their own personal traumas that they are trying to capitalize on and weaponize, like you said. It could be anything, okay? Abusive relationships, miscarriage, eating disorders, all of these things are used to try and create a sense of relatability while also being a manipulation tactic. But thank you so much for sending in your story, and I would love to hear about how your law school goes and where you end up in the future. Very exciting. And with that, that's all of the horror stories that I have for this video. I have lots more. I'm very excited about that. I easily have enough right now for 2 more horror story videos. They will be coming very soon, but don't let that dissuade you from sending your own. I can never have too much. I will never stop saying that. So with that, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I will see you in my next one real soon.